and welcome to Recon Paint Gaming. I'm Patrick. Today we're going to be doing a video on turn zero. Turn zero is when you're setting up your objectives, your rocks, your ship placement, and then setting your dials. So it happens all before you determine where your ships are going. So it's basically a really good strategy to make sure you have a strategy and you don't just want to place them haphazardly because you might be hurting yourself, you might be helping yourself, which is good, but then you don't even know that you're helping yourself or why. And today we're going to be playing a very important scenario, which is Assault at the Satellite Array. This one includes 5 different objective tokens. The rules are at the end phase, you measure for each ship that is range 0 to 1 of one of the objectives. If you have more ships than your opponent, you get to score a point. If your opponent has more ships, they score a point. And if you guys have the equal number of ships near an objective, nobody scores a point for that objective. And you do that for all 5 objectives. So it's actually possible to score 5 points starting at the end of round 2. What you really want to take into consideration when you are playing this scenario and others like it is how you have to set them up, which we're going to cover the rules for that as well, where you should put them depending on your list, or if you actually like to play the objectives, or if you have a lot of ships that are large base, because in this scenario, if you have a medium or large base, that ship counts as 2 ships rather than a small base, which is 1 ship when judging on the 0 to 1 range for that objective. You then want to determine if you want them all kind of clustered together, or if you want them really spread out, if you want them close to your board edge, or if you want them on your opponent's board edge. And this can throw off a lot of people because depending on if you're picking up high initiative ships and you have them all close to your side of the board, that might interfere with your play because you really want to possibly go to the other side of the board, outflank your opponent, really make it hard for them to get you in an arc and shoot you. But if you know that all the objectives on your side of the table, you're kind of stunted from going to the other side. Or if you do, you have to come all the way back, and then your opponent might score some points before you. And it really makes for an interesting part of the game, and you really have to pay attention to it because you could be the person that is to the millimeter. You measure everything exactly how far because you know your ship is going to go that distance with this maneuver and you're going to end up right next to it just out of line, but you're going to have to rock. Or you could be one of those people that literally just lofts them onto the table and hopes it's, legal. If not, you shuffle it around a bit till it is. So let's go over how to set up for this scenario as well as others because they do have similar rules. And we're going to cover for Assault at the Satellite Array. All right, everyone can see the table? Good. This is the center objective that always starts in the middle for all of these scenarios, from the chance engagement all the way to the salvage mission. So normally I can just measure by taking the 2 corners and going like that. I already did it from that side. You can see it's just a little bit off. So I can just adjust it a little bit to where it's more in the middle. It doesn't have to be exact. I mean, you can make an exact if you want. You can use a range 3 ruler with a 1.5 and another range 3 with a 1.5 and get the exact middle if you would like. But for this scenario, we're going to start with it just around the center. So, with Assault at the Satellite Array, you first have to roll off to see who gets to place the first objective. So, you know the drill for this. You take each set of dice, you roll them, and whoever has the most crits or the most focus or the most hits in that order. And in this point, we're going to see that the first order has the first placement. So the rules are when placing an objective token. The first objective must be placed on your side. It has to be within range 3 of the center objective. And also it has to be range 2 to 4 of your board edge. And another little trick is a 5 straight is the same distance as a range 2 ruler. So you can actually use your 5 straight for measuring range 2. And then we have another range 2 ruler here, which makes it range 2 to 4. Now it does say within 2 to 4. So that means I can't place it past the range here, and I can't place it within range 1 here on this board edge. It has to be between range 2 and 4. Now, the next thing is if I place this one here, notice it's range 3 here, it's within range 3 here. That is a legal placement. I can leave it right there as is. My opponent, let's just say, they do the same thing and they place one over here. That is range 3 of here. And the other is they must be at least range 2 apart. So even though I can go all the way to range 4 here, and I can put this all the way here, let's say I put the first one here. This can't be here because now it's within range 2. So I would have had to back it up a bit. I'm going to move this back here. So this is now legal. This is going to be range 4 here. It is within range 3 here, and at least there is 2 distance between here as well. Now, this is where it can get really tricky because of the rules that I just explained, to where each one has to be at least range 3 of in the middle, has to be at range 2 to 4 from the board edge, and it has to be at least range 2 from another obstacle that was placed, not the center one. That means that you can get really tricky with where you put your second objective, because the second objective is placed on your opponent's board edge. When there's only 3 objectives, you place the one objective and then you place the other 2 on each other's board edge, and then you continue on to the obstacles. This one has 5, so you have to place the first one on your side, then you place the second one on your opponent's side, and vice versa. So it can be really tricky because if you know the limitations and the range distances that they need to be, you can kind of force your opponent to place the next one in an area that you really want, or you can limit where they can place it. So it kind of hones in on where you'd rather have that objective. You could, of course, place the next objective as far away from your board edge as possible towards their board edge, but I'm going to show you a nice little trick to where you can kind of make it to where your opponent has to place it in a certain spot, and it really puts it closer to your board edge. So we're now back at the table. We started with the first objective. We then placed the first one because we're the first player, and we're going to minimize the distance of where you can possibly place the second one when your opponent puts it over here. So as you can see, I'm range 3 from the center. I'm still within the range 2 to 4 from the center. And you then can see there's nowhere for it to be placed all the way from here. And I've taken basically a quarter of the entire mat away for when placing an objective. Opponent could place it here, but notice how close I've placed this to my board edge, because this is legal. That's as far as it can come because this is range 4 and this is just out of range 3. So essentially, I've now made it to where this is the only spot that he can put it or she can put it, because this has to be at range 3 here. I've taken away this whole area. So now I am making it to where they can only put in this section right here, which is basically range 1 to possibly 3 away from the board edge instead of the range 1 to 4. And it really puts it where I want it because I've cut off as much as possible. If I move this a little further, which I can, and as long as you are staying within the range 3 bubble, because it has to be within here, I know that I can move it even further as long as I keep sliding it this way, and you can't place it within range 1. So the more that I move this further, as long as I'm careful and I know exactly where I have to put the next one, because even if I put one here, my opponent could put it over here as well, as long as it's not range 2, which if they put this one here, it's also going to block a lot of things. So be careful when you're placing the one on your side as well. Don't place it too close, because then you're going to make it even narrower to where you can put this. So this is basically as close as I'm going to get it, and really limit, because I also have to remember I have to put it range at least 3 here. I can move it maybe a little closer there. So, as you can see, I've now made most of the objectives on my side of the table because my opponent placed it so close over here. He or she limited where they could put the next one on my side. And so this is why I wanted to explain it like this when it comes to the 5 obstacles, because you can really make it difficult on yourself if you're not paying attention. if you place, or if I am the first player and I place it like exactly where I want it on my side, which is going to cut out basically a quarter of the mat away, and then you move your token closer to my board edge just because you don't know, or you're thinking, oh, turn two, it's going to be so far away. I'm going to move twice, and by then I'll be there to pick that up. Now you've cut off another huge part of the map because the next obstacle that gets to be placed is the one that I have in my hand. So I can put it closer to my board edge and make it to where almost your entire side doesn't have a token on it, which, let me tell you, you may like it like that. You may have ships in your list to like a list that I have on the other side of the table, which is Moralo. Moralo can teleport from one side of the board to the other in one turn and loves it when the objectives are on your side of the table, because if all of a sudden you aren't playing objectives and you are looking for the joust at me, Morale is going to sneak behind you and start stealing some of those objective points, which is going to hurt you in the long run. Or if you have something to where your ships aren't as fast and you really need them on your side of the table because you're so used to your opponents coming at you, this is great. And you have to also remember this, because this all depends on who the first or second player gets to be just for the setup of these ops or objectives, and then also the asteroids. Because most of the time this works when you are the first player. When you are the second player, really have to pay attention to where you're putting these obstacles. You almost want to give yourself as much range as possible, unless you really want to choke your opponent, which you could just do the opposite of what I did, which is if I placed my objective in the corner, like I did my first one, and the opponent then could put one closer to my board edge, which then chokes me and puts that obstacle in my deep corner as far as possible, which might hurt me because I'm so used to going to the other side of the table and scoring points. We're going to continue now back to the table as if that was the correct setup. The first order still has the initiative. All the objectives are out. Now it comes to rock placement. So each player gets to bring 3 obstacles of their choice. Now, most people don't know that you get to pick all of them when you are selecting a rock. You don't have to pick just the ones you brought. So if I know that my opponent brought a big rock and I don't like it and I just want it to be off to the side here, I can put it off to the side so that I know this rock is not going to come into play for me. I'm hardly ever on this side of the table. It's now in this corner as far as possible, which is range 2 from each side. I now can let my opponent select the next rock. Now, this is another interesting part of the game that a lot of people just either don't think about, or, they don't exactly know how to utilize the rocks in the best way. And they don't even have to bring asteroids. You could bring debris or the gas clouds and see how they fare in your match. You might find out that, a lot of people fly through the debris clouds more than the obstacles, which is better for you because, like, you like it when your opponents are stressed, or you really like gas clouds because they're so oddly shaped, hardly anyone brings them, and you're so good at flying that you never hit them, but other people do, and you love it when people are ionized. Whatever your choice is, understand that you get your rocks, and also you get to choose your opponent's rocks, and your opponent usually brings them for a specific reason. Either they like the big rocks because, again, they don't hit them a lot, and their opponents do, or, it helps block lanes or keeps people from getting to certain areas of the mat, or cuts off certain areas of the mat and forces your opponent to pick lanes and travel up them instead. So back at the table, first order does get first pick of the rock. You know, I do like the objectives. My ships that I have over here, some of them fly slowly, some of them are really quick. So I can utilize rocks and such like that. I already know what my opponent has over there. So I have a scum list over there with Moralo, Lupin or Lapin, Bosk, and then 2 of the Mandalorian Royal Guard, which are really troublesome and very maneuverable. So I might want to start blocking lanes and force them to come up certain lanes. So I can put rocks in the middle of objectives. I can put them in front of objectives so that they can't easily score. I can even distance them a little bit so that I know range 1 is just outside of the objective. So if they do decide to come around the rock this way, they have to swerve around the rock. They can't just you know, come up all willy-nilly, because then that's going to limit possibly barrel rolling and such like that. Also, they can't just come straight at it and take the objective. They have to go around it in some fashion. Next up, your opponent gets to pick the next rock, and can decide from where you placed yours where they want to place theirs. So if you don't like flying rocks, you can always, or flying around rocks, or if you don't like them, or if you really want to force your opponent to uh, set up their ships in a different way, you can put one here, same thing. They can't just fly next to it. They either have to fly to the right of it to score this objective on one of the turns, or they're going to have to come around it and bank in. So it kind of makes it hard for them to score initially. And also, it's an oddly shaped rock. A lot of the times, players can get caught on these nubs right here, which can be extra frustrating. So you guys keep placing rocks to where you think that it's going to be optimal, and then we're going to see where it comes out. All right, so now that that's complete, you can see where we started placing rocks. I placed the first one here, then it was this one over here, and then I think I placed that one here, and then this one got placed here, and I placed one here. Now, the whole reason that I placed the rocks for myself, which is going to be first order today, um, is because I put a rock here because it's going to do the same thing that this rock did here. It's going to keep them kind of from coming in the middle. It makes flanking a little bit harder for them, or it may even split their forces to where now it's two forces on either side of the rock, which I think I'm going to be a little bit better at. And also, I put this rock here to block them from kind of putting another one here. They might have been able to squeeze one here if they really wanted to, if it would have been range one away. But you can use rocks to block other rocks, just like you can use objectives to block other objectives as well. And as you can see, the opponent placed these here as well because maybe they didn't want them on their side of the table. They wanted them next to these objectives, which makes it harder for aces to pick lanes and come around. And then also you notice this kind of triangle here to where players can come here and then come in this way, or they can come straight through and then kind of get mucked up in the middle here with that. So this side's a little bit more open and free, except for that rock in the corner. And that's what you're going to have to look at and pay attention to determine what type of rock setups that you prefer or are better for your list. And you have to pay attention to this because there are going to be games to where you just could not do anything. You couldn't boost, you couldn't barrel roll. Every maneuver that you did was so close and it just really tightened you up and you don't understand why, and it's just really frustrating. You really have to pay attention. Where were the obstacles and where were my objectives? Because a lot of the time you're going to find that they have some relation to one another, and it's going to have some relation to what your ship can and can't do. Like with my first order bombers, they do like to boost and then do this 3 or 2 straight because it clears their stress. With my first game when I played with them, they were terrible. I could not get into one position. When I did get into a position, I immediately had to barrel roll out of it because there was either a rock in front of me or there was another ship that just could not let me get where I needed to go. And it was a lot because I wasn't paying attention to the rock placement and the objectives were kind of all over the place. And I noticed that my opponent started gathering up a lot faster than I did. And I had no way of kicking them off because we were playing the salvage mission, which again is another 5 objective scenario. So really have to pay attention to when you are setting these things up. With the assault and the satellite array and also the salvage, the same rules apply when setting up objectives. You start with 5, you roll for first player, you start with 1 in the middle, and you place on your side first, as does your opponent places on their side first. Then you place on your opponent's side, and they place on your side. For the other one, which is scramble the transmissions, that one is only 3 objective tokens, and rather than placing them on your side, you place them on your opponent's side and they place on your side because there's only 3. They don't want you placing them on your side and then have nothing to place on your opponent's side because it kind of just means that they're going to kind of be placed off to the sides there. So you have to place the one in the middle and then place one on your opponent's side. They place on your side. All right, so that's it. Uh, learn from your mistakes. I'm going to now play test this scenario versus an AI with my first order. I'm going to try to record it for you guys. I'm going to see if this setup with the objectives and also the rock placement is best for me or if it's best for my opponent. And I'm going to take notes and such like that and learn from my mistakes because I'm going to take this first order list from start to finish. I'm going to make a list. I've already revised it because I realized that I put way too many bombers in it and most of the say abilities did not work in my favor. It was too much to follow. I couldn't keep track of all the upgrades, and I got lost a bit. And at some point in the match, I just could not maintain anything that was coherent for a list. So now I've revised it. We're going to see how much better this list is, and then I'm going to keep going from there. And every time that I play, I'm going to make sure that I pay attention to the scenario, where I placed my rocks and my objectives, and also find out where my list succeeded and didn't succeed, which pilots really didn't do what I thought they could do on paper, and then see how it transfers into the game. And then also, see which ships I could do without and which ones I'm going to need as support ships, or if I need to take more ships because I couldn't keep track of the objectives, I just got beat out on it. And then on top of that, I'm going to have to figure out how to play against other lists, because you have to factor in opponents' lists as well, because there is a lot about this game that is still so untapped about what's good and what's not. What is, that ship that's at the bottom of your pack there, and nobody takes it, so nobody has any idea what it can and can't do until finally someone wins a tournament and they're like, hey, maybe I should take a look at that pilot again. But thank you guys for watching. Please check out recontokens.com for not only your X-Wing needs, but we also have tokens for Legion. We have tokens for World of Tanks. We have it for even, War at Sea, everything. So even if you don't like what you see there, you can definitely message Robert. We don't charge for a customization fee. So even if you see nothing that you like, but you need tokens for another game, please reach out to him and say, I need tokens for X game, and we can create them for you. And, again, just costs the same rate as every other token that we already sell. It doesn't cost you an extra fee for customization. All right. Thank you. Please click like and subscribe below. Let us know that you guys like these videos. And, if you're watching these videos and you haven't clicked subscribe, like, I think only 10% of our viewers are subscribers. So I would like to know that if you constantly view our content, that you like to keep seeing it. And the only way that we know that is either you click like or you click subscribe, and then we know. All right. Thank you guys. Have a good one.